What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe in Wizards. I'm Matt Modderno. Joining me is Kevin Broom. We're going to do draft stuff. This is our yearly pod, getting ready for the draft. Kevin, just first of all, man, how you doing? It's been a while since we've done this, maybe since last year's draft, so we're long overdue here.
Yeah, alive and kicking,
We'll take that.
Doing okay.
Survived another Wizard season just in time to get excited about draft stuff again, which is basically what we live for.
And hey, okay, before we dive into the draft, let's just say, for me at least, the NBA playoffs have been absolutely spectacular. This is I think the best basketball I've ever seen. The intensity level in the first and second rounds were, previous NBA finals level. And the teams that we have advancing to the finals, you've got Indiana with Tyrese Haliburton, who is my favorite NBA player to watch. Cool. My son is at the Indiana University, and the entire state is going nuts for the Pacers.
I bet.
And Oklahoma City is my favorite, and has been long my favorite non-Wizards team. So, plus where I am now, I work with a lot of people from Oklahoma, and that state's pretty much going nuts for the Thunder. So, this is going to be fun for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, it's cool to see like underdoggy teams, turn around and, kind of make something of themselves. It gives me hope that a plucky young upstart team here in DC can eventually do the same thing. And I think nailing this draft pick, or these draft picks, I guess I should say, would go a long way toward doing that. So let's help our team do that. We'll give them some good intel. And we'll see if we can build the right way here.
Yeah.
Kevin, first and always, where can people find your work before we get going here?
Pretty much everything I do now is on bulletsforever.com. I may revive the So Wizards podcast, but it's been a while. It's been at least a year since I've done an episode, so I might revive it. It's just a question of time.
I gotcha. Yeah, I people have been asking me like, where have these podcasts been? And I now have 10 extra hours of commuting per week, which is basically my Wizards podcasting time that is now non-existent. So I'm glad we could fit this one in. It's, I don't know, exciting time of year. Like you said, I have not watched the first couple rounds of the playoffs, and I'm just now getting into it a little bit late in the game here. Yeah. And I'm like, holy shit, both these teams are really fun. And it's got me excited for like, man, the Wizards need like a couple just like fun players. And this sounds stupid, but I've sort of tweaked my eval of just like, who will I have fun watching next year, whether it's good or bad. I'm factoring that in now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing to do and fun. I mean, that's one of the things I love about watching Tyrese Haliburton play is he is always having fun. I mean, that game where they got their teeth kicked by the Knicks, I think that was game 5, and he played terrible, and he walked off the floor with a big grin on his face, like it's basketball, it's playoffs.
We'll see. Yep,
this is still fun, And then he played great in game 6, so
he's both having fun and a killer, and I feel like that's somehow the balance you need. So that's something we got to put into Yoda, is the fun but killer metric.
This is the reason I wanted the Wizards to draft him when in his draft year is we talked about him, and I had him with the top 2 rating that year, and he was somebody where I had him rated was different enough from where the consensus was that I went and did a bunch of extra research on him. And everything I found made me more convinced that he would be a good player. I didn't think he'd be this good. I thought he'd be like a really good point guard, really good playmaker, competent 3-point shooter, maybe have trouble getting the shot off. Yeah. I didn't think he'd be this, but
a prime offensive engine on a finals team. Yeah, I would have laughed in your face if you told me that's where he was headed.
I know, it's like a magic trick what he does, because he is one of the best playmakers in the league, and he doesn't have the ball. It's just fascinating how we can do that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, not dribbling the ball into oblivion to make a play happen, which is cool.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into it too, please explain how you go about your draft process, because we do this very differently, and I think are aligned more than we're not, which says something here too and makes me feel a lot better. But walk the folks through it a little bit for us.
So what I do is purely statistically driven. It started on a message board, good Lord, 15 years ago now, probably. And it was really just kind of an academic exercise at first to see if I could use publicly available stats to estimate, to do a better job of evaluating, or at least as good a job of evaluating as the draft guys do. Sure. And I would say although I've refined it and I feel like it's gotten better over the years, there are still plenty of misses. There are still plenty of hits. But anyway, the way it goes is it's based on my PPA algorithm, stat, whatever, metric. That's the word I'm looking for. It's based on my PPA metric, which just gets at the production. And then I include some other adjustments for things like, tools that matter in evaluating a prospect: size, athleticism. And this year, for the first time, I'm also including it's like I guess a bonus, if you will, for where the talent evaluators have them. And it's only basically a small bonus for guys who are in the top 10, top 5, and then the next 5, rather than like penalizing people. And that's in an effort to get at people like Jaylen Brown to unearth them a little more. Because like Jaylen Brown was not very productive in college, but the scouts—
There's clearly something there that everybody saw, right? Like,
yeah, they could see the size, the athleticism, the strength, and the skills, and could feel like, okay, he's in the right situation in the NBA context, he should be better. And so there's something to that. And if I were working with a team, this is something I would be explicitly adding into the algorithm. So, and then I read about Kevin Pelton's been doing this for years with his statistical thing, incorporating the algorithm. I could go deeper into the draft. I'm not going to, not this year, but at least, because this is purely experimental. It's the first time I've tried it.
Oh, no, it's cool. I'm interested to see how it kind of tweaks things a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Wizards have the 6th pick, the 18th pick, and the 40th pick. Let's just do 6 and 18.
Real quick. One other thing. So age also matters. So older players get pushed down further. Younger players get pushed more to the top. Again, that's based on research. And then one other thing is I do account for the level of competition. So there's a guy who now works for the Denver Nuggets who had done some really good work on— I do not remember his name, and I apologize for that, but he did some really good work on the relative strength of international leagues. And I borrowed his analysis and used that to estimate the strength of relative strength of leagues. And so you've got, like, at the high end, what is it, the Spanish ACB?
Yeah, it's the top one.
Lower
EuroLeague competition, that kind of thing.
The Israeli league, the Mexican league, those kinds of things are much lower in terms of the quality of competition. And NCAA is basically at about the same level as several of those high-end professional leagues.
Yeah, if you're matched up with Peter John Ramos in the 2nd league in Puerto Rico or something, it should not weigh too heavily into the metric here a little bit.
Yeah. And so just as an example, the year that the Wizards drafted Denny, Avdia, I had him, I think, 9th or 10th overall on the board, because I did all players play professionally overseas with the same brush. Once I did this analysis and went back and you just simply made the adjustment based on the league, he dropped down into like the 20s. So
gotcha. Interesting. All right. Well, that's definitely going to change some things, I think, with a couple of these guys, because the guys projected around 6. There's a lot of young dudes here, and I think that means something. Let's maybe just start with the guy I like the most, which means I almost am assured that he won't be there at 6. That's Texas guard Tre Johnson. Currently right now, and this is my go-to Bible for all of this stuff, it's the rookie scale consensus big board. They take all of the reputable draft sites out there and sort of, average out where they have different folks. And on that board, you've got Tre Johnson at 5th. Kevin, where were you at with Tre Johnson?
So I guess I'm slightly lower on him.
Okay.
I've got him 9th.
Okay. So, but in that range.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not downgrading him. Like, I'm saying he's a 2nd round pick. Sure. So, I've got him right now 9th overall. I'm going to be I mentioned this to you in the pre-show, but I'm going to be making an adjustment to how I handle basically the height length portion. And that could affect where he ends up. But just real quick, what I see in the numbers with him that I would say are positives. He's obviously like a great 3-point shooter, great free throw shooter. Those are excellent. Not very many turnovers. That's good. Doesn't foul much. That's also good. And then what I see that's pulling him down was the 45% on twos.
Yeah.
Which is suggests that either there's
doesn't get to the rim much. That takes a lot of tough twos. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, if you're taking, getting tough twos in college, it is a concern. Yeah. And then also the rebounding is pretty low, 3.6 per 40 minutes, 3.1 assists, not great, not a ton of steals, not many block shots. He's assist to turnover isn't great. It's like he's not a great playmaker. He's a good shooter. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he has the size to really play like small forward, like a wing sort of thing.
Yeah, he's a 1 or a 2, I think is what you're banking on there.
Yeah. So that would be my my red flags on him. I wouldn't even call them red flags, just like
those are the things that kind of put him where he is. And I think those are exactly what you see watching him play too, right? Like it's a guy that he's going to just drill any decent look he gets at a 3. Yeah. But he gets himself into that 15-foot range and takes a lot of tough fadeaways and things like that. But I will say contextually, like Texas had just brutal spacing. He basically was the 3-point shooting on the team. And they brought in guys that were high dollar guys for them, like Arthur Kaluma, that just literally couldn't shoot. So anybody that had a decent percentage on their team had no volume, and anybody that had any volume couldn't make them. And I think him being kind of like a skinny freshman, like he was just sort of deterred away from the rim because they had a couple of big plotting guys down there. And you just saw a lot of like, okay, I've dribbled for 15 seconds of the shot clock. Let me just pull up and just do something stupid. And I'm hopeful that that's like a thing you can coach away in an open NBA court. Because I actually do buy the playmaking. Like he'll whip the ball around and then it ends up back in his hands at the end of the shot clock. And you're just like, oh. Okay, like, what do I really do here? But I think that's what you're banking on. If he's suddenly a 6'5" point guard who can score from anywhere on the court, now you're cooking. If he's just a 3-point shooting 2 guard, that's still valuable. But I think there'll be more there. And I think anybody taking him in the 3, 4, 5 range, that's probably what you're betting on too.
Yeah, I would say that what you've described is a sort of profile that probably can do pretty well in the NBA, in part because if the coaches can get those mid-rangers out of his shot repertoire so that he's either taking threes or, if he played in the Washington system last year, for example, the system they were running, they were definitely, they were definitely trying to work towards threes. Mm-hmm. And so he wouldn't have really been in position to jack up a bunch of tough mid-rangers. He'd have been pulling up from 3. Now, one question I have, how's his defense?
It was not great for throughout the year, not great at all. I did get to see his NCAA tournament game in person, which was nice because he really ratcheted it up. And that showed me like this is clearly not an inability to do it. It was maybe I'm not being asked to do it given the offensive load, or 2, I just didn't lock in or didn't understand how to play it well enough early in the year. But I was encouraged by that. Whereas one of the other guards we're going to talk about that I also like played no defense at any point during the season. So we'll get to that in a minute here. But
that's one thing I just want to be clear on so that folks know. I don't watch college basketball. My interest in college basketball is in the prospects that come into the NBA. So sure. This is my evaluation is purely stat driven. And so I rely on you to watch the games and tell me what you see.
Yeah, that's why I like comparing notes after. I think it kind of covers all our bases here a little bit. All right, so next guy just kind of on the list here is a dude I like, and I know he will not be well received by Yoda overall here, so I just want to get him out of the way early. The other guard I mentioned here that as of this point has played absolutely no minutes of college defense. That's Jeremiah Fears. So this is what I see, Kevin, and tell me if the numbers represent this. It's a guy that gets into the paint at will, doesn't finish that great at them yet. Again, really skinny, but is just absolutely a nightmare for people to stay in front of. Didn't shoot it particularly well, but has very good touch, knockdown free throw shooter, finished well on floaters and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about the shooting long term. This is another guy that took his team was even worse than that Texas team overall, and also got them into the tournament single-handedly. Had a huge slump in kind of early in conference play where they lost like 5 games in a row, and then came on strong again really late in the year. But just has MFer energy in their tournament game. was just like clapping in people's faces and stuff, and nobody could stay in front of him, was getting double teamed, was pulling up from three, like doing just crazy shit. But like I said, guards absolutely no one at this point. And the one thing you put it in for age, one thing I might suggest even for an additional tweak, this is a guy that was a reclassified freshman. So he got himself into college basketball a year earlier than his graduating class would have indicated. And I do think that matters, right? Like one less year of high school basketball to build strength and work on some of these other things and jumpstarting your college career. The list of guys that do that at the point guard position and are even just like average collegiate players as freshmen is like almost non-existent. So I think to me that even inefficient that he got a team into the tournament, I'm like crazy high on it just for that reason. But he is undersized. So you're banking on the 3-point shooting coming around, him somehow becoming a tenacious defender. And I don't know, maybe he continues to grow or a little bit and hopefully he bulks up and finishes a little better around the rim.
Yeah. So I would say a lot of that does show up. Like number one, he will be still 18 on draft day.
Yeah.
And I believe he's still going to be 18 when the NBA season starts.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, his 2-point percentage was okay. It was about 50.5%, which is not bad. And his free throw shooting is outstanding. 85% is really good. Your comment that he played on a bad team with pretty limited teammates, that I think shows up in two ways. One, only 5.5 assists per 40, which is on the low side for a point guard, for a playmaking point guard, and 4.5 turnovers. So what that suggests is he was really trying to make a lot of plays, and shooting 28% on 5+ 3-point attempts per 40 minutes is, he was still putting them up. So he doesn't seem like he lacked for confidence. And
that is literally like you could put that as the tagline on his game. Does not lack for confidence.
That's fun. And I would also say that the people can't stay in front of him definitely shows up in the numbers. He averaged 8.4 free throw attempts per 40 minutes, which is high. That's going to be, let me see, I'm just skimming down the draft. I believe that's tied for the highest mark John Tonje.
Who I also love, despite him being 41 years old.
He averaged 8.8 free throw attempts per 40, and he appears to be the leader in the draft. And then, Cooper Flagg, 7.7, Dylan Harper, 7.1. Who's else? 8.4, Noa Essengue. Is that how you say it? Essengue, yeah. So, he's getting to the line. People are having trouble staying in front of him, and he's drawing fouls. So that's a good sign. Drawing fouls is usually a really good sign of a player who's going to be pretty good. I have him, I call it basically a 3-way tie for like 11th, 10th, 11th in that range. Yep. So it's not like I think he's going to be terrible. I think he has markings that he should be pretty good. But the efficiency was low, only a 48% effective field goal percentage. And so, and his true shooting was 57%, which is also a little on the low side. I would say I have some flags. I'm not concerned about the size. The way I do size, he measures out just fine for a guard.
The reach is good and stuff like that. Like a wingspan solid.
The wingspan. Yeah, he's got a good wingspan. Give me a sec. I can pull it up. How I look at it.
I think people have gotten a little too bent out of shape about that too. Like he's like wiry at this point, right? Like he's got to bulk up a little bit. I just always make this case with people that do draft stuff when they like really knock a guy for them being weak. It's like, who was the last prospect you saw that really didn't work out because they failed to add strength?
Yeah.
That's usually not the thing that's like the main limiting factor for anybody. It doesn't help, obviously, and it might accentuate some of their struggles, but most guys in an NBA conditioning program are going to get stronger. And,
also, 18-year-olds add strength. They bulk up, they get stronger, they mature physically. At 18, it's not unusual at all for guys to be really skinny. You look at pictures of Magic Johnson when he was 18, he was a toothpick. So
agreed. All right, let's keep it rolling here. So it's funny that you said you have him like around 11th, because other than Tre, who would be my favorite of the guys who could potentially end up there at 6, I think realistically, everyone else we're going to talk about, I'd feel so much better about them if we were taking them at like 10 through 14. It's just, for me, there's like this weird kind of just big drop off with this next tier of guys where I just like at 6, it just feels like there's a little bit of a weird wedge here. Actually, let's have this convo. I don't think he's probably going to be there at 6 on draft night. But Ace Bailey is somebody that, I throughout the year was like a little nitpicky on because it was this, he should be up there with Flag, Dylan Harper thing at the start of the year, which I didn't see, but I'd love him at 6 just because of the physical profile and some of the skills. But I would imagine he did not grade out particularly well because of some of the limitations and inefficiencies in his game here overall, Kevin. So what did you see with Rutgers freshman Ace Bailey?
So what shows up in the numbers is, one, he was very inefficient on offense, tying 104 offensive rating, 51% 2-point percentage, which is pretty low for a forward. Which
he's basically a 6'7.5" 2 guard. Like I think that's really what you're expecting.
More wing, and I would say I don't have him too far down. Okay. Yeah, I've got him as a wing, so I don't have him too far down. That's about where but it's still, his shooting a little on the low side there. His 3-point percentage was fine. His free throw percentage a little low, but that's the kind of thing guys often improve. 69% free throw shooter. That's not a bad free throw shooter, and when he gets to NBA coaching, they'll get that up to 77% or something, and it'll be fine. I like his rebounding. 8.6 per 40. That's pretty solid. No playmaking whatsoever, and he did block some shots. Doesn't get many steals. No turnovers to speak of. More turnovers than assists, but that's mainly because he didn't do any playmaking at all. Just 1.5 assists per 40. That's pretty close to the lowest in the draft.
Basically every possession is, I'm going to take 1 or 2 dribbles and shoot from 17 feet. And I'm going to make more of them because everyone knows I'm going to do it than most normal people would do. But you'd just like to see a guy that is a pretty solid athlete be able to use those things.
Yeah. In the numbers, I will say he looks reasonably talented.
Yeah.
It's, that efficiency being as low as it would be a concern.
Sure. Yeah, you're just banking on a couple things coming together. Like he didn't play as athletic as he looks like he should be. So you're hopeful that he can figure some of those things out. One of the things I really come around on, and I wanted to talk to you about this too, Kevin, is just, I feel like ball handling is a thing that really is like a separator for the absolute top guys. Like, who's an elite player in the NBA that's not an above average ball handler for their position? Like it doesn't happen a whole lot. Like, there's some guys that are a little limited, but like, you saw Jaylen Brown as a guy you mentioned earlier, like he took a big jump as a player when the handle got a lot tighter. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I worry about with Bailey is just, he's got a pretty good first step, especially with guys his size guarding him. But I feel like the handle holds him back from being able to just actually take advantage of that a lot of times. And then he settles. So like, that's why I like a guy like Fears. Like the ball is on a string and he's going to be able to get into space and capitalize on more of those things. So that's when I worry about a guy at that size being able to develop, because there's just not a long list of like these wings that went from like underwhelming ball handlers for their, position or role essentially to like higher end ones. But I don't know how you would evaluate something like that pre-draft, is like how good someone's handle is or not.
Yeah, I think that's probably more of, you watch it and you see the functional dribble. In the numbers, I would say that the indicators for that would be things like, the turnovers. Mm-hmm. And I would have to go a little deeper into the numbers to see, because you'd be looking at, there's a difference between like bad pass turnovers and ball handling turnovers. Mm-hmm. Is he trying to make plays and the ball's just going out of bounds, or is it more, did he dribble the ball off his foot? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's enough there when you see it though. And some of the things when he does them, your just eyes kind of pop out of your head. Like there aren't a whole lot of people that make some of the tough shots that he makes. And you just feel like if some of the easier stuff ever comes around with him, he's a guy that if he's there at 6, I think you just take it and you don't really, you're willing to roll the dice with that. I think if you're the Wizards, and it seems to fit a decent amount of things they look at positional size and things like that too. So
yeah, no, I hear you with that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Just take him if he's there, you take him because he's the most talented player, and then you figure it out, you coach him, and try to. Man, nobody thought you were going to be any good.
Right. Yeah. You motivate him that way.
Well, you got to show him.
I think the other thing there too is just resale value with the guy, that if he's on top 5 consensus on everybody's board, if you get him with 6 and he doesn't really work out with you, there might be somebody willing to give him a second try, later on. So I always think about those kind of things too. If it doesn't fully pan out for you, who are people going to stay higher on longer than, whereas if you really reach for a guy at 6, the rest of the league's kind of looking at you like, good luck with your project there, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I know. I wouldn't want to pick him 3rd.
Yeah.
I'd be provisionally willing to pick him 6th, depending on who else is there.
Yep. I'm with you with that. Duke freshman, Kon Knueppel. For my money, the best shooter in the draft. I'm just like, it's the one superpower there. I'm not really worried about with him. Another guy I was, so you like this, Kevin. I got to see him play in person against our local George Mason Patriots down at Durham, which was amazing. And he literally just hand checked the entire time. It was the only way he could stay in front of a quicker guard defensively, was to just steer them out of the way. And I guess because it was Duke at Cameron Indoor, they were just never going to call it. And I was like, oh, I am not loving the defense here. But he's also strong as shit for a freshman. Like, you cannot move this dude. And I was like, all right, defensively, I've got some concerns. But as you watch him over the course of the season, got a lot better. And I think all the Duke guys said they actually thought he was probably their best individual perimeter defender, which says a lot considering even a guy like Tyrese Proctor was a really good one. Sion James, they had good guys, but I guess their defensive metrics all said that Kon was the guy that they were the best defensively when he was on the floor. And that's excluding Flagg, who at that time they were classifying as a front court player, but says a lot for a guy that projects out as a shooter. Kind of okay size, didn't like blow anybody away at the combine, not a crazy athlete, but one of those dudes offensively that just gets to spots and moves people off spots, and they don't move him off of spots. And I feel like that's like this really underrated, I make use of my space kind of thing. And it's something that actually Bailey does kind of well too, despite being tall and skinny, is like, I have my vertical cylinder that I'm in, and I don't let you disrupt me from being in that sort of pocket. So again, not a guy I would love if we were drafting like 3, 4, 5, but once you start getting into that 6 to 10 range, now I'm a little more intrigued.
So Yoda really likes him.
Okay.
Kon
Knueppel.
Yeah. Kon Knueppel.
Yeah.
So when you talk about being the best shooter in the draft, we're talking 56.7% on 2s, 40.6% on 3s, and 91% from the free throw line. I mean, ball goes in when he shoots it, right? Now, not a ton of rebounds, but he some, and not a ton of assists, but some, and he got some steals. So there's some stuff to his game. I've got him 4th overall on the board. He pops up pretty high. It's in that shooting. That shooting is really valuable. And when you were talking, I realize he's a bigger player and he's a different kind of player than the guy I'm about to mention. But Jalen Brunson dominates in the NBA. He's 6'1", and he does it with craft and skill and strength.
Good footwork, getting to space, open
and
spaces.
So the ability to not get dislodged is huge, and that's like Jalen Brunson's superpower is that he gets there. You can't move him out of there, and he's just going to pivot and he's going to footwork you and do all this stuff, and then he's going to put up some crazy looking shot. And he doesn't have long arms. I mean, his arms are relatively normal for a human being, slightly long for a human being, I guess, but short, just normal for
NBA standards.
And so he still gets the shot off, doesn't get blocked a lot, all that stuff. And so, hearing you talk about Knueppel as being somebody who doesn't get dislodged, and clearly he can make shots. I mean, we're talking, high level shot maker. So, I would be willing certainly to take him at 6 if he's there.
And yeah, there again, there's some concerns. Like he's not a crazy athlete, so does the defense take longer to translate and things like that, and not crazy long things like that. Like if he doesn't score efficiently the same way in the NBA, do you get much else there? I do think he was a decent ball mover, and honestly, one of the things that I didn't like about this Duke team, they didn't really have a point guard. Like Flag initiated a lot of offense. They let Sion James, who couldn't dribble with one of his hands, bring the ball up across half court a lot of times. So I think that's actually something I'd give the Duke guys more credit for, is the amount of shots they made, considering nobody was really like breaking down the defense for them other than when Flag did it. Says a lot about him too. So I'm not worried about the shooting translating. It's just, can you get anything else from him enough to make it worth taking him, in this range? And that's really going to be the question. But it's every one of these guys, I have like one really big question about, at least one really big one.
That's like the Corey Kispert question, though. I mean, Kispert's a great 3-point shooter. He's learned how to get in and convert inside in a lot of ways, although he doesn't finish well when there's size at the rim. But,
yeah.
It's the thing with Kispert is that there's so little else to his game that he has to score more efficiently than he does. He has to shoot over 40% from threes, or it's tough to have him out there because he doesn't defend, he doesn't rebound, he's not a playmaker, all of those things. And, despite the protestations of a certain announcer, he's not the best cutter in the history of the league.
So that's another thing with Kon. He's going to be a good driver, I think, for that reason. He'll move the ball pretty well offensively. He's a decent ball handler. Not great, could get a little better, but good enough for what you ask him to do. The issue I have with someone like Kispert is there's a lot of 1 for 6 and then 5 for 6 nights.
Yeah.
And on the 1 for 6 nights, he's absolutely unplayable. And you just don't really know what it'll be. Whereas like someone like Kon, I very much expect like you will get 40% night over night and average out to 40% night over night. Like it's like, okay, he went 2 for 5 tonight. Okay, tonight he went 3 for 5. Tonight he went 2 for 5. Tonight he went 3. You know what I mean? Like it's just very consistent amount of production, which I think is a little easier to baseline around too.
Yeah.
The other Duke freshman here, Khaman Maluach, 7'2" center, just absolute like finishes everything around the rim and doesn't really take a lot of bad shots, which I appreciate. We reached that phase of the pre-draft cycle where now people are getting excited about the video of him hitting like 4 threes in a row. And now he's Brook Lopez all of a sudden. And I would be shocked if he's ever, hitting more than like a dozen threes in an NBA season. So I wouldn't bank on any of that. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about with him, Kevin, the block numbers are kind of low for a guy who's so huge.
Mm-hmm.
But when you watch them on the court, teams are literally scared shitless about taking the ball anywhere near the paint. So I don't know if there's like a deeper way to look at that of like what teams shot, as a percentage when he's on the floor versus like actual blocks. But I would imagine there were a lot more long distance twos when he was out there versus, rim attempts and things like that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a number out there that gets at that. I would be, if I were to dig into that, I would be looking for things like opponent shot distance with him on versus off. I'd be looking at, opponent shooting percentage, do their at rim attempts go way down, that kind of thing. On the other hand, so you mentioned the blocks being relatively low, and he was very slow, doesn't leap very well, and the leaping doesn't matter that much when you're 7'2", right? So well, that's good. The other thing, though, is that NBA players often are perfectly willing to challenge a guy like this, especially when he's slow. The trick with Victor Wembanyama is the block radius is so vast because he's also agile, and that's not this guy.
No, he will be a drop coverage big only, and staying directly in front of one person at all times, and it's. Everything they've done to build out the rest of this Wizards group, I think, is with positional versatility and switchability in mind. And to me, taking a drop coverage center, at 6 just makes literally no sense. So I've seen a few Wizards fans recently maybe suggest him a little bit more. And there's been more rumblings. Teams are liking him in that range of the draft. He's one of the guys I would just be absolutely against taking this early for that reason. Where do you kind of grade him out, though, Kevin?
I mean, I've got him with a top 10 overall grade. I think I've got him 8th. He's insanely efficient, 75% on twos, made his free throws. Now, I do see some and also a terrific offensive rebounder, more than 5 per 40 minutes, which is excellent. Yep. Probably the highest number in the draft. Yeah, scanning down, that looks like the highest in the draft. So that's a good sign. Now, of course, not surprising for a guy who is really purely a play finisher, is, basically no assists, also very few turnovers. He basically, from the numbers, it looks like he just caught it and dunked.
It's that is literally the extent of the offensive game, is let me drop it into the hoop.
Yeah. And that's a little more challenging to make that, because that makes him into basically the rim running center, but he's not fast and he's not agile. So I wouldn't want to pick him this high. I think that there will certainly be better players, higher, at least players that I have higher rated, available at that spot. I think that whoever picks him, if they have the right ecosystem around him, they'll probably be pretty happy with him. But I don't think the Wizards are the right home for him.
So that's a guy that's bread and butter on just shooting right around the rim and trying to make his name on defense, essentially here. Pivoting kind of the other end of the spectrum here, a little bit, is a much more offensively versatile guy is what you're betting on. And that's Maryland freshman Derik Queen. Was not as good defensively, and that's part of the challenge here, I think. So I would love your perspective on Derik Queen. I would say he is the most popular choice from what I've seen from the Wizards fan base of guys that will be likely available to them at 6. There have been some rumblings, from draft analysts that he's slipping a little bit maybe with people because of a bad combine. I wouldn't take a whole lot of stock in the combine with him because it literally just validated what you saw on the court. I think that you're not drafting this guy for crazy explosiveness. It's everything else he does. So I think if you're taking Derik Queen in this range, you're just really betting on the things he does well and being able to add to that and not focusing on, maybe the things that you see as limitations.
Yeah. So I have him rated, I think, a lot lower than it sounds like Wizards fans have him. I wonder how much of that is because he went to Maryland and they're hopeful that the local guy can.
And he played with Bub some growing up, that'd be cool and fun.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. I mean,
sell some T-shirts at the very least. So
I'm trying to just skim across here. There's the things that are popping out to me are like the 20% on threes and not very many attempts. Only looks like about 30 or so this over the course of the season.
Yeah.
He's not really a particularly impressive rebounder for his position. There's not much playmaking, more turnovers than assists. Also, not many steals, not many blocks. And then you combine all that with, as you say, the bad combine where he graded out into, I would call it the penalty area in Yoda for agility and vertical. So, I talked about the bonus that I give for draft position, draft being top 10 in the consensus draft, and he has that bonus, and I still have him basically at the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
In the 20s. So usually I have anywhere from 25 or so, 20 to 25 first round grades on players, and he's the last one in this draft at 23.
So I'm not quite that low on him. I am lower than Wizards Twitter. Some of this I was assuming is maybe just because I overanalyze a lot of the Maryland players because I watch every minute that they play as a collegiate athlete, and sometimes that's a little too much for draft purposes. But in high school, he started out here in the Baltimore area and was an insanely productive scorer. Actually shot the ball reasonably well from the high school line early in his career. Went to Montverde Academy, played with Cooper Flagg, and literally everyone else in the first round here, essentially Liam McNeely, Asa Newell, all these other guys. Rob Wright, that's going to BYU next year, that was good at Baylor this year. Like, loaded team, and developed this weird hitch, especially from the free throw line, and was just like a catastrophically bad free throw shooter toward the tail end of his high school career. Somehow totally overhauled that between summer of senior year of high school and freshman year at Maryland, which led to him being a pretty decent free throw shooter this year. He's got good touch overall around the rim. And late in the year, a lot more threes started to go in. And the misses early in the year were hideous. Like, he was barely hitting rim. He was hitting the side of the backboard and, hit 2 threes in an NCAA tournament game that looked really smooth. Like, so I suspect he will be able to shoot a reasonable percentage at times. So I think if it works, you're just banking on a grab and go center that he'll be the best ball handler of the bigs at his position. He does make some zippy passes, but also gets out over his skis a little bit where you see some of those turnovers. I just don't know what he does defensively. Like, that's what I worry about. And to your point, like, everyone thinks the Sarr pairing works well with him because he'll be the rebounder that makes up for Sarr. I don't think he's a good enough rebounder to be the one that evens that out. Like, he's solid, but I think he's not huge, right? Like, he's probably 6'10" in shoes. So you need him to be so elite, like at ending defensive possessions, I think is his way to contribute defensively. And
also I'd point out that, he's at,
9 rebounds a game.
Yeah. Well, I do the 11.8 rebounds per 40. Sarr was at 10.
Yeah.
So before he came to the NBA.
Right.
And I believe he was above 10 per 48, whatever. I mean, Sarr, I understand the concern about his rebounding, but I don't think that's much of a concern, to be honest.
Yeah. He's a guy I would give a fun bonus to. 1, he's a super likable kid. And 2, when it's working, it is fun as shit to watch. A guy grab a rebound, go coast to coast, like cross another guy up, and then like Euro step through the lane and like hit like a reverse layup. And you're just like, wait, are you allowed to do that as a college center? So, there's some cool things there. But like I said, you're really betting on the things that working, I think.
Yeah.
At that point, let's pivot to another Big Ten freshman here. And that's Illinois freshman guard Kasparas Jakucionis. This is a guy I was very high on for the first half of the season. And then not only his 3-point shooting cratered, but the entire team's 3-point shooting cratered. And they had a crazy stat this year that Illinois was like, I don't know, 21-0 or something on the year when the team shot over 29% from 3 as a team. And they were, a 24-10 team or whatever the case may be for the year. So it was either really just they shot the bare minimum and they destroyed people because they were so offensively creative otherwise, or not, and just so reliant on 3. Another situation where their other best shooter was their center, Tomislav Avicic. He went down with mono for a while. The whole team got weirdly devastated with mono at some point. So, like, you just saw him personally fall off a cliff efficiency-wise. So, it's got good touch. I buy that he'll shoot long-term. So, I would be curious to know if he shot, like, a reasonable percentage, even, like, just mid-30s, what that would do for your evaluation of him. Because spoiler alert for people listening, Kevin's about to tell you he's slightly lower on him than I think that consensus is.
Yeah, so the consensus has him as a top 10 pick.
Yep.
And I have him lower than that. I have him basically like 18th overall.
Okay, so not too crazy far off.
I do. So let me start with things that I do like. Number 1 is the 2-point percentage is 56%. That's really solid for a guard. 85% from the free throw line. That's quite good. The 3-point shooting, like you said, is pretty bad. 31%. And then I like some other stuff too. The rebounding is good. 7.2 boards per 40. That's really strong for a guard.
Got good size for a point guard.
Yeah. 5.9 assists. I worry about the defense. A lot of turnovers too. But, you see a guy who's trying to make plays. And at the collegiate level, you kind of – I count the turnovers, but, they are part of the system. But it's not really as big a worry point if a guy is also making plays, and he's doing that. You'd expect that the decision-making and the turnovers could be reined in with NBA coaching and work. It's the shooting is the big concern. If he can get that up to, 30, basically like become a league average 3-point shooter, it looks like there's a lot else to his game that could be worth it. So this is somebody where I think for me, if I'm sitting there at 18 and he's there, I would take him. I wouldn't be interested in picking him 6th though.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think he'll probably go perfectly in between those two picks, which is, if they trade down, maybe a candidate for you. He is a pick and roll wizard, like truly. Like I think if that's something you're going to do as a heavy component of your offensive system, that's somebody who's going to look good in it. There's another European point guard prospect he's even bigger, but also has some shooting concerns here. It's BYU freshman Egor Demin, 6'8". Again, started the year shooting pretty well. He did not shoot well internationally prior to coming to college basketball. And then all the talk out of BYU training camp was, holy shit, this guy is making every three he takes in these workouts. We're so excited. Started the year off great, fell off a cliff for a while, finished better on the back end. They made a little bit of a tournament run. And now all you hear from anyone is that in every workout, this guy is just demolishing all the shooting drills. So it's one of those things where I think if you buy the shooting, you can justify like a crazy high grade on a guy like this. And if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's truly the swing skill for a 6'8" point guard, essentially. Like, you have to be able to shoot it if you're not quick enough to get by guys, basically. Yeah.
I mean, great size for a guard. And so if he can't make it as a guard, maybe you can make it as a forward.
Yeah. And he says he's willing, some guys are like, I'm a point guard, that's what I am. He's like, I don't care. Just play me. Yeah. Truly, Kevin, I think he's probably the best passer in the draft. Like, he just does crazy shit that you're like, oh, okay, he tried that. Oh, it worked. Oh, okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah, I'm just skimming through my list here, and he's one of the top guys. It looks like Nolan Traore has averaged more assists, per 40, and that looks like the only one. So he's right there at the top. And I really also like his rebounding. He does go get after it for a guard. Makes sense considering his size. A lot of turnovers, 4.3 per 40, but he's still at almost a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio, 1.9 to 1 to be exact. And that's fine. He's playmaker. The thing I would be worried about is the shooting, like you said. And he did make twos, not at a ridiculously high level, but a pretty solid level for a guard. And but his shooting from three was 27% on threes, and he took a lot of them.
Yeah.
So that is a concern. But I have him lower, down towards the
like late first, kind of.
Yeah, late. Well, like late first into maybe even into the early second round.
Wow. Okay.
But I've 25th overall, so technically probably be a first round pick, even though
in that range.
Make the cutoff. I have a score in Yoda, and the cutoff is at a certain point. In most years, I don't get 30 first round grades, and part of that is just because with the way the draft goes, teams are always picking players that are lower rated, so it ends up being that I populate the first round pretty well anyway.
Makes sense.
And then also by keeping a consistent score, it gives me a way of measuring the relative
year to year kind of stuff.
Yeah. So last year's draft, I think I only had 18 first round grades, which was the lowest since I started doing this. And this year it's back up to the norm, 24, 25, something like that.
This is one of the few things I agree with John Hollinger on, because I've made him my avatar of all things that I don't like on NBA Twitter. But he says there's about 20 guys every year that he thinks worth taking an individual draft. And I usually subscribe to somewhere in that general ballpark, give or take.
Yeah.
All right. Those are the guys, I think, whose names have been bandied about in the Wizards general range here. Let me just pull up the mock to see if I'm missing anybody. All right. So the one guy we got hit in this range is another French forward, Noa Essengue, another young, will be 18 on draft night and to start the NBA season. I will just profess right now, I've watched almost no actual film of him, so I don't feel qualified to give a really full deep dive. The very few clips I've watched, I kind of don't get it. So I would be curious to know, Kevin, how you're seeing him in the numbers so far.
So number one, I like him. I've got him rated 11th overall.
Okay.
And I don't know where he's mocked. I don't think he's in the top 10 unless
it's about actually that he is 11th on the rookie scale consensus big board. So
okay. So that's cool. So he played in let me skim across here.
He played for Ulm, a team in Germany.
The German BBL is a solid league. Yeah. It's the level of like a good college team playing in a good, strong conference. Yeah. So things that I like: 64% on twos, 8.2 rebounds per 40. That's solid. Some decent offensive rebounding, which is also pretty good. Decent steals for a forward. 1.7 steals per 40. And then if you want to talk about some things to be concerned about, the assists are on the low side, just about 2 per 40, and only 25% on threes. So that would be, I would say, the overall concern. I don't have the tools stuff. I don't think he did the combine. He's going to do the European combine.
He's going to do the Euro one. I keep hearing he's a crazy athlete, and that's the thing I haven't really seen so far. Like, there's a lot of, he's a 6'10" wing and he's so mobile. To me, he just looks like a 4.
I would say wings have to shoot, and he's not a good shooter. So, or at least he wasn't this season.
Right.
And then I certainly would love to see, what the tools are physically. Again, he's a guy I'd be very interested and willing to take. He's also young. He's only 18.
Yeah.
And will be only 18 on draft day. So, like I say, he's young. I see a lot of things that I like. I don't think I would want to pick him 6th. I think there's other guys that I would rather pick there. But if he's sitting there at 18, I'd pick him.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me. Depending on who's there, maybe there's a guy like Moore or whatever, but that range of the draft, I don't really care all that much who you want to take a swing on. There's been I would say a slightly growing contingent of people proposing him with the 6th pick to me recently, which that's the one where, again, I need to do like a deeper dive here still, but I kind of like, really? This is the 6th pick you guys want? So I haven't seen that yet, but it makes me feel a little better that you've got, him somewhere kind of in between the range of their picks. Anyone else that you want to talk about in this? I would lobby strongly for this guy with the 6th pick range.
So I don't know about the lobby strongly, but there are a few guys that I would say that I have questions that I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on.
Sure.
So the first of those is Jase Richardson, guard from Michigan State, shot it well, all this kind of stuff. If you look at his numbers on a per minute basis, they aren't all that different from Dylan Harper's. And I know that he's a little smaller, that kind of stuff, but I'm curious what you think of him.
Jase is interesting, and I was just talking with some folks on the group chat about this the other day. So son of NBA star Jason Richardson, known for being an insane athlete, and Jase is 6 feet tall and not particularly that good an athlete. And he has a younger brother, Jackson, that is 6'5" and an insane athlete. So it's like, damn, like literally just skipped him with the elite physical tools. Because I think he's the most.
What you're saying is he's basically Chris Whitney.
Yeah, honestly, you look around, you're like, holy shit, the family reunion, everyone is 6'5" and has a 40-inch vertical, and I'm over here at the kids' table. But the guy that started off the year coming off the bench for Michigan State, which was an interesting choice even then because it was pretty clear he could play, ended up being kind of like the engine of that team by the end of the year. Only really drives one way with one hand, which makes me a little anxious about a college guard who's a little undersized. Like, it worked at the college level. No one could stop him going left, but it's probably a little easier to do at the NBA level when all of the guys are bigger and more athletic than you. So you're really betting on him being able to do like the Jalen Brunson thing we talked about and use skill and craft. And I just think like the window to do that is a little narrower, but betting on, the second generation NBA guy, I don't think is always the worst guy to bet on in those situations. It worked for Jalen Brunson, right? He's a clear student of the game. Yeah. So I would be totally fine in that 18 range. And I think that's probably closer to where, most teams have him projected. Let's see. Yeah, he's 16 on that mock. So if he was really your guy and you wanted to go up to 14 to get him, I don't remember what his combine measurements were like, where he was at wingspan wise, Kevin. But I don't remember it being particularly good.
His wingspan was good in relation to his height. Let me pop this. Pop
a plus 5-ish kind of thing.
Give me a second. Help if I typed in his name correctly. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, he had a 5.5-inch difference between height and wingspan, and that kind of difference, we're talking. I mean, that difference is a full standard deviation above average.
That's good.
And that kind of
it offsets a little bit of the
differential is usually a good predictor of a successful player.
Yeah,
I have a theory about that based on my own playing days.
Fire away. Let's hear
it. My theory is that when you're playing, you make passes around the height of the guy that's there. You see the guy, you see the height, and you think
hard to judge how long he is, though, just looking at him.
And then you get these like long arms that just like reach up and steal the ball. I'm thinking of one particular guy that I used to play with. He was probably about 5'7", maybe 5'8".
Okay.
And he probably had like a 6'8" wingspan. It felt like it, because you'd pass the ball anywhere near him and he'd just like, his hand would pop out and he'd have the ball and you'd be like, damn it, I forgot that he's got this freakish.
It sneaks up on you.
Yeah. So when I look at him, I see, the shot making is there. Very good shooter from everywhere. Not a ton of playmaking, but some rebounding. It's like I see enough there that, I mean, at the moment he sits 6th in Yoda, which I feel like is probably higher than it should be.
I'm a little surprised by that, but given things like the offset for height and stuff, but I guess, like you said, the wingspan kind of negates.
I'm going to be playing with some way, the way that I'm doing length, because I don't particularly love what I'm doing, but I'm intrigued. And like you say, if maybe move up to 14, 15, 13, somewhere in there and pick him, absolutely.
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me one bit in somewhere in that range. I think on my own personal board, I have him around the range of their second pick. So no complaints there for me. Let's, I saw Gregory mention him in the chat. Let's pivot over to Collin Murray-Boyles, because I think he's another guy who's really divisive. My guy, Bryce Simon from the Game Theory podcast, did a mock a month ago and suggested him for the Wizards. It was before the lottery, so they were 5th in their mock draft, and he had Collin Murray-Boyles going 5th to the Wizards. And I, along with the most of Wizards Twitter who saw that, roasted him for it. But I would love to hear where you're at with Murray-Boyles, because he is insanely productive.
Yeah, I like. Well, he shows up really well in the stat profile. 62% on twos. Obviously, cannot shoot threes. 26% on threes, but barely took any. A lot of rebounding. To be honest, his stat profile looks a lot more like a big, but he defends.
That's just for context. Like, he's a 6'7" center, in my opinion. So that's kind of what you're banking on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as I look at his profile, look at his stats, and look at his profile, he looks to me more like one of those energy hustle defender types than who can also score, unless he can shoot 38% from three. If he can't do that, I think he's more I'm trying to think of who.
Chuck Hayes.
Yeah, Chuck Hayes. Yeah, I can see that. But if he can't shoot, that's a challenge for him at 6'7". I could see him as a small ball center. I could see him, like I say, as a high energy, wing defender, maybe like Atari Eason, although Atari Eason's longer. So. Yeah,
like, to me, you're hoping he's like, you and I were both high on Brandon Clark going in that particular draft, and I'd say injuries are the main reason he hasn't been a productive NBA player, consistently. But that's the thing I worry about.
Such a weirdo. I enjoy him.
Yeah, agreed. You don't see many people with that profile of like a guy with a minus wingspan who's also the best athlete in a class, which is wild.
Yeah, a minus wingspan who's tons of steals, tons of blocks, tons of rebounds. It's like he's, it's like, and then his stat profile in college in Yoda, I've run the doppelganger, and his top comp was Karl Anthony Towns. It's like, how is this?
Yeah, makes total sense.
And it's just because he just produces so much of everything that he's kind of similar to everything.
Murray-Boyles is the guy I worry about of just like hyper productive college player, but it's mostly just because he's like plays harder and is smarter than people, and does that still translate against like better NBA guys? So I am lower than consensus on him, and I would steer clear even at 18 personally, which is probably an unpopular opinion for a lot of folks, but I just kind of don't get it.
I would definitely draft him 18.
18,
yeah. I would consider drafting him 6, but probably not. But I would probably love to see him. I would say I wouldn't describe him as like insanely productive. He was productive, but not like the freakish, like you look at, say, Dennis Rodman when you
that's
college, they were absolutely
going to get every rebound ever.
Yeah. That he was playing against, like me, but Murray-Boyles was at least playing, major college basketball. His team wasn't that good,
and that was the thing. Like, he was probably the reason they were respectable for most of the year, honestly. And I'm thinking of one particular game where they played Georgia, and Murray-Boyles had like 30 and 18, and a guy I love, Asa Newell, had like 12 and 6, and it was just like, I still like Asa a lot better as a prospect.
Yeah,
but Murray-Boyles just stole his lunch money for 40 minutes. So it's like, how do I reconcile the same thing? But
you don't want to overread one game. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's just one that stuck with me. It's just like, damn, like he's just getting everything he wants here. But yeah, let's just talk about the other guy there, Asa Newell. It's the highest big I have on my board. To me, like, I think he's actually the ideal fit to put next to Alex Sarr, because I think he's like a 4 or 5 in like a good way. He could do both. So to me, you could have these two interchangeable bigs. He's mobile. He still protects the rim. He is productive. He's got touch. I'd buy the shooting long term. And I think like mobility is so huge right now, especially watching these playoffs. If you can have 2 6'9" to 6'11" guys that just cover a ton of ground, and I feel really good about him longer term, because I think he'll defend. And Gregory mentioned Marvin Bagley in the chat. I think he'll be a better shooting Marvin Bagley that's also a good defender.
Yeah, I have not run him through the doppelganger machine, but I share your view on Asa Newell. I've got him currently 3rd overall.
Wow.
62% on twos is really outstanding. The 3-point shooting needs work, but the free throw shooting's okay. He rebounds. Not many assists, which is something of a concern. But
not doing a whole lot of passing there. It was just finishing around the rim, basically.
Right. I mean, if he can set screens and roll to the basket, then he's at least got a role. You want him to be a little better ball handler for short roll passing, that kind of stuff. But not a lot of blocked shots, but he does get some steals. Doesn't turn it over, which suggests he's more in that rim running category. I have him classified as a forward, but I could, he would still probably be top 7, 8 if I reclassified him as a center. So
I think that's the beauty, though, right? Like, if you put him at the 4 and Sarr is at the 5, if he shoots it well enough long term, he offsets some of the rebounding. You stay mobile and switchable defensively. Like, one of the two of them isn't getting picked on or hunted in ball screens and things like that. So I like that fit the most.
The Wizards have shown a little bit of success with shooters. They got Sarr to become at least a semi decent shooter for stretches of last season. Presumably he'll keep working on that shot. Keyshawn George started awfully, but rounded into solid shooter from 3.
Yeah.
Seemed to anyway. We'll see. Yeah. See how it holds up.
Anyone you want to go to next specifically here, Kevin? I'll start to wrap us up. We're over an hour here already, and I could do this for another 2 hours with you. But anyone you really want to hit on here before we go?
Well, we can come back and do this again. But one other name I just wanted to talk about, because he's sitting 10th in Yoda, and I don't know what the hell to do with him, whether to keep him there or whether he should be downgraded. And that is Cedric Coward, Washington State wing. 21 years old, so a little on the older side for a prospect, but he is long and he is a great leaper and he makes freaking everything. 71% on twos, 40% on threes, 84% from the free throw line. And yes, he only played 6 games this season.
Yeah.
But I went back and looked, and those numbers, basically all of his numbers, including like strong rebounding, strong assists, decent steals, relatively low turnovers. Those were all pretty consistent with what he's done throughout his collegiate career. And he's a guy I would just be really intrigued by picking. I think that the mock draft consensus has him lower, later in the draft. I've got him 10th overall. So
he's rising in a lot of these convos that come up here too. Like this is a guy that went from like not on boards to late second, early second, late first. He still shows up kind of that way. He's 29th on that big board you mentioned, but you're hearing some could he go lottery convos right now.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that from what I've been able to determine about him, he seems kind of the prototypical player that teams are looking for. That athletic wing who can really shoot it and will also defend and rebound and do some playmaking. I mean, he did all of that, and so he's a guy. Like I say, I don't know if I would pick him 6th. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. I guess he got hurt. He hurt his shoulder.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yes, shoulder. Yeah. Sorry, there's enough injuries this year. I can't keep track of everybody. Yeah, I want to say he had to have shoulder surgery and is still not cleared for contact. Right now, he's doing 5-on-0 kind of stuff with people and working out again.
He had a partially torn labrum in his shoulder.
So this is a guy that started out playing Division III basketball, and they asked him, hey man, you're going to be an NBA player. How did you start out playing Division III basketball? Does that just mean everybody missed on you and you were the sleeper? And he's like, no, I just wasn't good at basketball. And that was a wake-up call for me that I had to work really hard to actually get good. Yeah. And I kind of love that as an answer of just just people sleep on me. Everybody says the same shit, but just no, I sucked. And I had to kind of figure it out is awesome. Transfers to Eastern Washington, doesn't really do much, his first year there. And then by second year is one of the best players in the Big Sky, scorching the nets, doesn't miss essentially. Transfers to Washington State, gets hurt after 6 games or whatever the case was. Yeah. This is a dude, I think, that if he'd had the sample size, I think you nailed it, of the archetype that all teams want is just worst case scenario, this is a 3-and-D wing.
Yeah.
And this draft doesn't really have that. It's actually a good guard draft. It's a good big draft. But this is another reason, and maybe the last guy we'll talk about here too, is an Arizona freshman, Carter Bryant, has really seen his name, rise through this draft process for the same reason of, this is a freshman that only averaged 6 and 4. But there aren't many 6'8" guys that are good athletes that shoot a reasonable percentage. And I think for that reason, somebody is going to take Cedric Coward, around, the lottery just because of it. And same with Carter Bryant, I think, because everyone wants that position and they're kind of aren't obvious. You have to take these guys, here to do that.
Yeah. Carter Bryant is another guy. I like him as well. Yeah. I've got him classified as a forward. I think he could probably play wing too.
Yeah, he's a 3-4. I mean, that's kind of what you're banking on, I think.
Yeah, so that's why I have him as a forward then. Yeah. But he rebounds, not many assists and stuff, but he's a good shooter, 37% on threes, 59% on twos. That's really solid stuff. And, good steals and blocks, over 2 in each per 40. And that's pretty strong.
3 names I'm going to throw at you real quick. Just tell me where you got them here. We won't go super deep into them, but just names that have come up. Georgetown freshman Thomas Sorber is a guy I like more than most. Be curious to see where he is on your list.
I've got him. Looks like he landed 20th.
Okay.
And, looks decent prospect. If the Wizards picked him 18th, I wouldn't be too upset depending on who else is there. But
same. Yeah, I'm fine with him at 18. Michigan point center, Danny Wolf.
Danny Wolf. I know I ran his number. Where is he? Oh yeah, I've got him pretty low. He didn't leap very well at the combine, and so I've got him in the 40s.
I think, yeah, I'm maybe not that low, but I am lower than consensus. There are some people, I think, in the Wizards community that would love him with that 18th pick. I'm not there. I've got several bigs ahead of him on the
ton
list.
of turnovers, some assists, good rebounding.
He is a grab and go guy. I just think the things he does well are like create offense as a big, that there aren't a lot of NBA teams that are going to let him, initiate the pick and roll for a lot of these things, for like an inverted.
The guy I will say that I have rated right below him is someone I want to be great just for the name, and that's Yanic Konan Niederhauser.
Okay, so just for you, he played on a dog shit Penn State team. Was this monster athlete. I saw him early in the year and was like, oh my God, this dude is incredible. Like, he's huge. He's throwing down everything. And then he just kind of like, they didn't really do much. So you never really heard about him. Yeah. And then he got to these combine, workouts, and people were like, what the shit? Like, where was this guy all year? This monster human is just like dunking from the free throw line. And you're like,
he's 7 feet tall with a 36-inch vertical.
He's an incredible athlete. Yeah.
When I saw his combine numbers and I looked at his overall stats and stuff, it just made me think: is he the second coming of JaVale McGee?
Yeah, it's that kind of vibe. He's already bulkier and stuff. I think they were really banking on him coming back next year, because Penn State is going to be terrible. Sorry to our guy Greg Finberg, if you're listening to this. Don't want your voice to stink, but I think they will. But yeah, he's an interesting one. I like him a good amount here. And
here's the thing: I would be willing to take him in the second round, pretty much wherever you got to pick.
If he's the guy at 40, I'm all for it.
I mean, we're talking. I mean, he seems like a classic sort of rim runner.
Yep. Dunk
finish, block shots, maybe rebound a little. Maybe the second coming of Daniel Gafford, maybe the second coming of Derek Lively. That type of player is what he seems to be in the number.
Yeah, if he's your third big long term, I'm all for it here.
Yeah.
Okay, I lied too. Just real quick, mentioned Merle Garrett has Ryan Kalkbrenner in the chat, and then also Gregory mentioned Maxime Raynaud as being probably the hottest name in draft Twitter. That's actually true. I think another guy played at Stanford, was insanely productive on a meh Stanford team. For a huge guy, another French guy. Wizards love people who speak French, so maybe that helps a little bit here too. But
okay, so first, let me just get Kalkbrenner out of the way. Yep. He's older.
Yep.
Played fifth year, played 5 years in college ball.
Very high Big East Defensive Player of the Year, if that helps, though.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, and then at the combine, he is. Let's see. Yeah, he was very slow, which is no surprise for somebody his size. I have him like late first, early second.
Yep.
So I wouldn't pick him 18.
Agreed. To me, he's a guy, if he's there at 40, I have no issues with it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, even though I have him lower, I would rather pick Niederhauser at 40 than Kalkbrenner. Gotcha. I just feel like Niederhauser's profile is a better fit for what NBA teams are trying to do than what Kalkbrenner's is.
Okay, like that.
And then the other, Maxime Raynaud. So before I answer this, I need to ask the question: was Stanford really in the Atlantic Coast Conference? Did I read that correctly?
First year of Stanford and Cal. I watched a Stanford-Cal home ACC game this year and just felt dirty while watching it.
I mean, that is just offensive to my dad's a geographer, and he's just going to be furious if I told him that.
Yeah, they jokingly said they should change their name to the All Coast Conference, which I think is a better representation.
Yeah. Or maybe the Both Coast Conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I would not share the view of why he's rising. I would be confused about that. I did not find him. I've got him rated basically towards the end of where I have players this year. The efficiency wasn't really there. He rebounded, which is nice, but no real playmaking, no steals, very few blocks. I don't see, and he's 22, so I don't know. Stanford wasn't that good either, so
They should have been terrible, and I will say he was the only reason they finished like 6th in the ACC or something like that. It's like almost solely him and Jalen Blakes, and I guess Isaiah Sellers a little bit maybe. But yeah, the things that he's doing to blow up on draft boards is like being really skilled, like putting the ball on the floor in workouts against nobody. Like those are the things I'm a little less swayed by personally. But again, if someone took him at 40, I have no objection to that personally. 18, I think, is a little crazy personally.
I'd be looking if they somehow ended up with like the 53rd pick or something. I would say, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, like that.
I think even at 40, I suspect that there would be better players available.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Any last ones you want to throw out that we didn't hit on?
No, I think we can save anybody else for last. I think we're still going to do our draft day.
I would love to. Yeah, if you're down for it, let's run it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
First round anyway.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, day 2 is a little bit more of a labor of love.
They should not have broken up the draft. Big mistake.
I still love the idea of doing a 3rd round and everyone taken in the 3rd round immediately goes to the G League team for the year. Like just some way to get people to care about the G League, just if you're going to take these 2 ways, just draft them, like have them immediately get designated to that team for the full year or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Then I'd be more interested in watching a day 2 of a draft if it was rounds 2 and 3 and they had to lightning round through them kind of thing. Like that'd be a little more cool, but this like painstakingly slow 2nd round, day 2 is just like, okay, right. I'm a disgusting human who watches way too much stuff like that. And even I am kind of just tuned out by the end.
I mean, I got to say, I did not watch round 2 last year.
Yeah.
I, checked it out here and there, popped in to see who was going, keep up to date. But, if they can't get you and me to watch the 2nd round,
it's a tough sell. Yeah.
Then they're not getting many people to watch.
It's players' families at that point, the ones locked in.
And I think you probably lose people as well if you just run it the whole thing, but at least you keep draft degenerates like ourselves
exactly
in the thing.
Yep, I love that. Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. I say this every time we do it. I didn't mean to keep you that long, but I could have kept you twice as long and still found it interesting.
Yeah, we could have kept going. There's a lot more players.
So let's save them. We'll do round 2. If you're listening to this and we didn't touch on your guy and you want to hear more about where we are on them or why, send me a note. I'll compile a list and we'll make sure we hit them all. Yeah. By next time, this is written up as like the link to it on Bullets Forever. If you want to post in the comments there, hey, talk about this guy next time, I'll make sure we come in with them. But Kevin, thank you again, and looking forward to part 2.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, everybody, hit that like button for us. If you're watching on YouTube, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will catch you all next time.